So hi everyone, I'm Josh Pulito, environmental educator for Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rensselaer County and the Dyken Pond Environmental Education Center. Tonight we're joined by Laetitia, Duret and Eric Latini of the Audubon Society of the Capital Region. We'll present information about bird-to-window collisions and their overall prevention. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We have a few things to go over before we get started with the presentation. If at any time during the presentation you have questions or comments, please type them into the chat box on the bottom right and we'll do our best to cover them at the end. Please do not use the Q&A section, just leave all comments and questions in chat. We'd like to get to know you a little bit better, so if you could please chat in where you're from, your age, and whether or not you practice feeding the birds where you live. We'd really appreciate it. We'd also love to know if you're an educator or parent and plan on sharing this information with youth or other people. After learning the information in tonight's presentation, I was highly motivated to pass it along to others, which ultimately led to CCE's partnership with a world leader on the issue, the Audubon Society. Tonight, you'll learn from the experts about the scope and scale of this problem and that there are both simple and affordable solutions to help prevent it. Our hope is that you'll put this information to use and that you'll share it with others. We have the ability to affect serious change through our actions. When we act on information personally, we're taking a big step towards positive change. However, when we share that information and the strategies with others, together, we begin taking leaps and bounds towards the changes that we want to see. Cooperation is a part of CCE's title for a reason, and I believe it's in large part because cooperation can lead to this exponential change. CCE serves residents of Rensselaer County by combining local experience and research-based education and solutions in the areas of agriculture, horticulture, 4-H youth development, and family and consumer science. We connect people to research-based solutions for real-world issues. Tonight's presentation by the Audubon Society of the Capital Region highlights this goal perfectly. As our guest presenters, the Audubon Society, walk you through tonight's presentation, we hope you're inspired and motivated to act upon and to share this information. This presentation will be recorded and posted to CCE's YouTube channel for your use as a later reference and to share with others who might benefit from the information. Finally, any reference to brands or businesses is not an endorsement and is done solely for educational purposes. Now, let's get started with our presentation. I'm going to turn things over to Laetitia and Eric, who will introduce us to and walk us through the issue of bird-to-window collisions.
Sure, thanks, Josh. Eric, do you want to start by maybe presenting yourself and the Audubon and our chapter?
Yes, sure. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. And Laetitia and I have researched these slides a little bit in the last few days, and we found out this information months ago, and we're very excited to share it with you. I think you'll find it informative and unfortunately rather shocking, the extent of this problem. But let me tell you a little about our Audubon chapter. We're the Audubon chapter, Audubon Society of the Capital Region. We're a local chapter of a national nonprofit organization. The Audubon Society of the Capital Region is a volunteer community which connects people to nature and inspires them to protect birds and their habitats today and tomorrow. So I can tell you a little bit about our chapter. We do have openings in our chapter. We're always encourage people to maybe listen in to a board meeting, maybe attend a board meeting. We have a newsletter that goes out quarterly. We are trying to get in as as involved as we possibly can with many things, but we're challenged with the sheer numbers of our board. We're just a small group of people. We like to think we do a lot of things, but we all have full-time jobs, and we're all busy with our work. So we try to do whatever we can in the time that we have. But we are able to get rather a good amount of things accomplished. So I'm not sure what else I could say right now, Laetitia, other than maybe you can tell them about I think we have some positions that are open.
Yeah, sure. I can give a tiny word about that. So yeah, so our annual meeting would be on February 8th, and we're looking for a recording officer, which is my current position because I'm moving back to France. So basically the idea is just to attend like one meeting per month and take notes and like transfer those notes to our president. So we have a record of our meetings. We are also currently conducting a climate watch survey to assess the impact on birds of climate change. So if it's something that you would be interested in, please send an email to Josh, and I'm sure we'll transfer it, or you can contact us through our Facebook page. I'm double checking the page every day at the moment due to this survey. And also, if at the end of this presentation, you feel like you would like to help us do something and to spread the word regarding bird window collisions, feel free to reach out to us. As Eric mentioned, we are a volunteer-only organization, so any help is welcome and really help us to do more things. So feel free to reach out if you'd like to get involved. So maybe a small word about the today's talk. So the idea is to introduce you to the issue of bird window collisions. Hopefully you will learn something, and you will, as Eric mentioned, you will be astonished on how widespread it is, how much of a problem it is, and how easily we could avoid it. So just to let you know, Eric and we did not prepare those slides. We're using the slides from the Bird Window Collision Group with their organization, of course, with their permission, of course. And so they have prepared this presentation. So the Bird Window Collision Group is a collaboration between the Acopian Center for Ornithology, the Muhlenberg College, the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society, so another Audubon chapters, the Wincotty Audubon Society, and Audubon Pennsylvania. So a large collaboration, and they have relied on advice, inputs, and support from an expert in this field. His name is Dr. Daniel Klein. He's a professor at the Muhlenberg College, and is a leader in research on the issue of bird collisions with glass. So any numbers or anything that we're gonna say basically tonight has been proved by research, and especially by the team of this researcher. So yeah, maybe just one quick question for our audience before we start. You could use the chat to answer. What do you think is the leading human cause of bird mortality? So we, as I'm transferring the, as Eric is gonna start to do the presentation, you can like put your thoughts on the chat, and we will see if you're right during the presentation. Eric, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I think so.
Okay. Up.
Birds, most people like and enjoy birds. Many of us here, I'm sure, spend a great deal of time looking out our windows, looking at birds. We spend money on bird seed. We spend effort to maybe improve our yards to make them more bird friendly in certain ways. So this is a big thing for all of us. While many of us have bird feeders, and again, maybe provide water for birds, some certain way to bring birds into our yards. We all enjoy seeing them, and we enjoy feeding them. We have a problem here, and obviously the reason for our whole discussion here. The problem is we have windows. We have lots of windows. Whenever birds are near windows, there's a huge risk of a collision. As far as we know, the Romans were the first people known to use glass windows, but these glass windows are not like the windows that we know today. They were small, rather thick, and only a minimal amount of light was able to get through. So they weren't very transparent. So bird issues or collisions were not that much of an issue, but we really don't know that fact. It'd be about 1,000 years before transparent windows became, evident in common households. And modern glass was first developed in the 50s. The first known documented bird window collision, at least in North America, was a sharp-shinned hawk flying into a greenhouse glass pane in 1832. So I guess, whether we like it or not, windows are killing birds. One of the things that I think mentioned a little earlier, when I first saw some of this information, when we all saw it, it was, I knew this was an issue, bird collisions, that is, but I never knew the extent. And some of these numbers and some of the slides that, we're going through, I was just shocked. I was absolutely shocked at the sheer numbers. So I'm sure a lot of people will be as well. The number of windows that we have is beyond calculation. If you just think about every home and offices and college campuses, other types of buildings, all windows, and all potentially, unfortunately, can kill birds. The bottom line is these collisions add up. Birds hit glass, and there's glass everywhere. Are we at Dr. Clem's slide?
Yeah.
Dr. Clem began studying this problem in 1974. Much of what we know today is either directly from his research or based upon it. He was pretty much alone when he started this, but now there are many, many people working on this problem worldwide. His original estimate published in his doctoral dissertation was between 100 million and 1 billion birds collide with glass annually in the United States. The low figure of 100 million is equal to the mortality caused by the equivalent of 333 Exxon Valdez oil spills annually. It's kind of, that one was pretty shocking to me. In 2014, using 35 years of additional data and latest methods, a group of researchers published a paper that moved the low estimate of 100 million up to 365 million bird window collisions annually. The math is pretty simple to figure out here. The low estimate equals 1 million bird window collisions every day, year after year in the United States. I guess to put this in another human perspective, possibly, the low estimate is greater than the total populations of the top 200 cities in the United States. So again, this is every year, year after year. So it's kind of mind-boggling when you get into the sheer numbers of this, the sheer numbers. These facts are again, were pretty sobering to me, and I'm sure anyone that sees them. But I guess the purpose of this is we're here and we have to face the facts, and maybe we can all do something about it, even in a little way, maybe in a great way. We don't have to think about necessarily how many buildings are out there. I just think we just have to think about the amount of birds. We hear about birds dying in other ways, of course. Poisoning, habitat loss, wind turbines, oil spills, cars. But only every few years we hear about a couple hundred birds maybe flying into a building, usually in bad weather. We hear a few things on the news here and there. but there's hundreds and sometimes thousands of bird deaths, but we're talking, we're only talking about hundreds of millions here when it comes to bird window collisions. And again, hundreds of millions. It's hard to comprehend.
Oops, sorry to interrupt, Eric.
No.
Before you move to the next slide, we had a couple of answers regarding our audience from, so at the beginning of the presentation, I asked what are, according to them, the leading cause of mortality for birds that are linked to humans. And we had like two main type of answers. The first one being like flying into windows, bird window collision, maybe getting hit on windshields. And the other one that was mentioned was house cats. So you're gonna, in the next slide, Eric is gonna give us the answer to this question, just to let you know.
Yes, well, pretty much after habitat destruction and perhaps cats, bird window collisions are by far the greatest human cause of bird mortality worldwide. And all other types of human-caused mortality altogether, they do not come close to the death caused by glass. All right. So again, birds are unfortunately dying everywhere there are windows. It's a proven fact. And unfortunately, this this topic is not getting the amount of attention it deserves. But once again, this is one of the things that we're trying to do, and many other people are trying to bring this to the forefront a little bit more and make people more aware of just the facts.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what is the problem, why so many birds die. And before that, I've got another question for our audience. Do you think that most birds that fly off after collisions are okay? So again, you can answer in the chat, and you're going to have the answer at some point during the presentation. So why so many birds die? The problem is that birds, they don't see glass as an obstacle to avoid. And so we're gonna see why is that, why they don't think of glass as an obstacle to avoid. So as mentioned by Eric earlier, up to 1 billion birds collide every year in the USA alone. Yet, most people do not see any bodies. When I talked with my parents about that and this presentation that I heard about, my dad was like, yeah, I mean, I never see any dead birds. So I think our house is pretty safe for birds. So the question is, if there is 1 billion birds, why don't we see piles of dead bird under our windows? So people just don't see it most of the time unless there are obvious marking like in the photo here. So the reason why there is no there are no dead piles of bird is, the first reason is many animals eat birds. So you can have chipmunks. There's a chipmunk eating a goldfinch here, a cat with a dead bird. So, and you also have other animals like skunks, squirrels, and insects that will eat the dead birds, so they will make the body disappear, basically. So that's the one of the first reason. Also, you might think that you would be able to know if there are strikes happening in your house, right? Well, there were field studies, and they have shown that even a trained person, like the person that have designed this presentation, so not us, but the experts in the field, they will not find evidence of a strike up to 50% of the time. So basically, they are missing between 25 to 50% of the collisions that are happening. So now is the answer to the question that I asked. Do you think birds that fly off after a collision are okay? So most people assume that birds colliding with a window will literally break their necks. So the reality is that birds have incredibly flexible necks, and they have been studies and x-rays that have shown that they do not break their necks when they collide. But what happens is they get concussions and internal injuries. And so those injuries can take days to kill them. And because they need to stay active to survive and they cannot receive medical attentions, you will often see a bird that had a collision fly away, and you would think he's okay, but basically it's just going to die elsewhere, out of sight and out of mind, unfortunately. So yeah, it's the idea in this slide is basically the same. So like most people think because they see the bird fly away, it recovered, but it usually didn't. And it's often out of sight under bushes or in ground cover that they die. So that's the second reason why we don't have piles of dead birds, to testify of this problem. Another problem with window collision is that it kills some of the most fit and strong individuals. It's not like when a predator is killing a bird, usually it will tend to go for the weak bird or the unfit bird, right? And by the window collisions, like all birds without discrimination, if I may say, will be killed. And by doing so, it may not favor the reproduction of the strongest bird in the population, and hence risk to weaken the gene pool. And another thing about like birds that do not die right away from collision, even if they don't die from injuries, birds that are stunned or slightly injured by the collision, if it was like maybe a lighter collision, because they're stunned or slightly injured, they become an easy prey for predators. So that's also another reason why you don't see piles of dead body. So I guess the key takeaway for this part of the presentations are most collisions go completely unnoticed. They leave no evidence to alert people, even trained people, to the problem due to the lack of bodies or window traces. And the lack of bodies is due to the fact that there is not usually an immediate death, and the predators are eating the dead birds or stunned birds. Okay. So now that we know it does happen, right? And it's a major problem, as explained by Eric, by the numbers. We are gonna try to understand why do birds collide with glass windows. So I have another question for our audience, which is when do you think, when and where do most strikes occur? And I was quite surprised by the answer the first time I listened to this presentation, sorry. So when and where do most strikes occur? So why do birds collide? So birds simply do not see glass, right? Glass poses two major problems. It's either clear, so birds can see through it, or it's reflective. So here is an example of the see-through effects. When you have windows in a building line up with another, so here's the first window, the second window is behind. Birds, they can see the habitats on the far side, and they're gonna try to fly through to the habitat that they're seeing on the other side. And usually they have no reason to slow down, because for them they're just going through this and flying towards this habitat. So they'll have a lot of momentum and hit the windows with a lot of force. So here is an example of the second effect and the second problem with glass. So it's the reflected habitats, like the fact that glass is reflective. You can see here why the reflected habitat can deceive a bird. Because it looks like it's habitat for them. So there, again, no reason to slow down, and they're just gonna try to go into this habitat. By the way, you may or may not see it, but on this window, there are deterrents, and those deterrents are Acopian bird savers in front of the glass. And so those vertical lines help protect the birds, but we'll come to that later in the presentation. So here's another example of a problem, like glass walkways at any level can be particularly lethal killers. So because of the see-through effects, right? We can see directly on the other sides, and it can be like very close from the ground, or it can be super high. It's the same thing for the birds. It's still like a super killer for them. Yeah, so again, any kind of glass structure that allows birds to see habitat through, it can be lethal to them, and that includes glass walls, noise barriers, bus shelters, and glass artwork. So basically any glass. So here is another example about, again, the two effects of the glass, reflective and transparent windows with the see-through effects. So here in this photo, you have both effects, right? At the bottom, you have the see-through effects, and like you can see the habitat on the other side of the building. And on the top window, you can see the reflective effects. Same thing for the birds. They're equally a problem. And something else about like the reflective effect, it should be noted that some windows that appear reflective under some set of light conditions may appear transparent under other light conditions. And so you might think that your window is not super reflective, but under the right light conditions, they can become reflective very, very easily. Yeah, so that's again another example. So at the top you have the reflected habitat effect, so you can see like the reflection of skies and trees. And at the bottom portion, this time it's not a see-through effect. I mean, it's a see-through effect. It's just like the plant inside the home instead of the habitat on the other side of the building. So I guess you have my point now, but this reflective effect and this see-through effects. Something that you may not know is that even like tiny, small glass surfaces are a threatening issue. So for example, here you have this basement window. It's basically 10" by 24". And it's reflecting vegetation, and you cannot really see it when you're just looking at it like that. But a bird flying at the level of this window, it will definitely look like habitat to them. On this particular case, the homeowner was drinking a morning cup of coffee on that deck when he heard the sound of a bird colliding with that specific window, which unfortunately led to the death of a juvenile robin. And look at the location of this small window, and you may wonder why a bird would fly through it and not just go around the building, right? The answer is birds are used to fly through tight place, right? They think about bushes, for example. They're used to fly among obstacles. And so almost no window is too small to kill. Basically, any surfaces, any glass surfaces is a potential killer of birds. Sorry, it's not the best news of the evening, but there are good news coming. So another example here where there was a mourning dove strike that happened because the sky clearly reflected in this side window here. And again, why the dove did not go over rather than through that small space? Well, to the dove, it looked like a clear passage. So the key takeaway is wherever glass and birds occur together, birds can die. So it's as simple as that. And I'm gonna start also to answer about the when and where collisions occur. So there is no season. It doesn't depend on the time of the day, nor the weather conditions. There simply is no place birds are safe near glass. I have seen that some answers from the audience, and it's true that most collisions are reported during migration and in urban areas, right? Those were my thought. I thought like collision happened only in big, large cities. So the reason why it's so you have so many reports, it's because it's usually when they occur, those massive collisions in urban areas, you have hundreds of birds that can die at one time, and they're usually in full view on sidewalks. So they have the pile of dead birds in front of many people. Just again, because you have less predators to take the bodies away, you have no cover bushes for the birds' bodies to be hidden. So they're just more visible. It doesn't mean that they happen more in urban areas. They're just more visible. So bird window collision in large cities along migratory corridors can be stunning, with hundreds of dead and dying birds at individual buildings. And this mass mortality events draw much attention and are the reason most people think this is the main location and timing of bird window collisions. But the truth is, it's not. These events, the one in the during migration and in large cities, they usually tend to occur in bad weather. So what happens is that migrating birds are forced to fly lower than normal due to weather conditions. So they're closer to the cities, and you have the cloudy nights that reflect on the building, and so this reflected light is confusing for the birds. So what they will do is basically they'll fly around and until they're exhausted, and then they'll just land at street level. And so they're not dying because they're blinded at this point. What happens is that at dawn, they're faced with those glass canyons. They have the confusing noise and activity of the city. And that's when they're flying into reflections of sky, into the glass in front of atriums that are filled with trees and other inviting vegetation. So it does happen in large cities, but it's, and when it happens, it's terrible in terms of number, but it's not that frequent, right? Because you have to gather all the conditions that I have explained before. So research has shown that actually it's the day-to-day collisions that occur year-round at residential and low-rise commercial buildings that account for the majority of bird window collisions annually. So it might be less impressive on a day-by-day basis and looking at one home, but again, those numbers add up, and at the end of the year, this is the main reason and the main cause of bird window collisions. And it usually tend to happen at homes with good habitats and feeders offering food and shelters. So one bird enthusiast reported recording an average of 100 strikes annually on one bay window facing their feeders. So the key points here is you have projects like Lights Out, where we are trying to convince building owners and managers to turn off excess lighting during the months migrating birds are flying overhead to provide them safe passage between their nesting and wintering grounds. So those projects are really important, right, and valuable. And we do not want to take away from that fact. But here we're concentrating on an often overlooked area of bird window collisions, where in fact most collisions occur annually. So it's the sheer number of windows in our homes, school, and corporate campuses that cause the greatest number of deaths annually. Okay, so And again, the more birds attracted to close proximity with glass windows, and you can attract birds in many ways. It can be with food, it can be with water, it can be with vegetation. The more birds you attract to close proximity with glass windows, the more likely bird-window collision will occur. It's simple logic. So what are the glass casualties? 1,311 species worldwide have been documented to die colliding with glass, and 290 species of North American species have been documented to do the same. So the list of species colliding with glass continues to grow as we are documenting it, and as we make contact with birds in new areas with habitat loss and urban development. And basically, any species that occurs near unprotected glass will eventually be on the list. So I know it's a lot of overwhelming facts. It's super sad. It made me feel terrible when I first heard it. But the good news is you can do something about it. Last but not least, before Eric is gonna start to give you some insight about what you can do, you might think, so there are laws that are supposed to protect birds, right? Such as the Migratory Bird Treaty Act from 1918, sorry. And so this Migratory Bird Treaty Act basically states that even the unintentional killing of a single bird can be considered as a federal offense. But I mean, most citizens are unaware of this. There is no way you could enforce a law like that to arrest everyone who has a window killing a bird. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything. So from now, we're going to talk about what we can do to solve this issue, now that we know the facts.
Sure. Well, thank you, Laetitia. Well, what can we do? What can we do to reduce some of these collisions? There's a lot of misconceptions about what actually works to eliminate or at least even significantly reduce bird window collisions. These following slides that we're about to show you are based upon properly run field experiments, and these results have been published in peer-reviewed publications. Since birds do not recognize glass, we need to do a couple of things. So one, we need to physically prevent them from flying into it or make it a visible barrier that they can avoid. So there's really just those two things. Again, you know, preventing them from flying into it or making some type of visible barrier. Number one includes, you know, we can hang netting in front of windows. We'll go through some different things in these upcoming slides. Even leaving your screens down. I was chatting with Josh previously before our presentation here, and if I remember correctly, I think he said that he just even moved some of his house plants to a different window, and that helped. I don't know. Am I correct in saying that, Josh?
Absolutely. So I did have a lot of luck just looking at the reflections in windows and kind of thinking like a bird and moving things around.
Yes. Well, great. Thank you. You know, I think the point is, I mean, sometimes it's just these little things that we can do and to solve a problem or prevent certain things. So making glass visible to birds. The most widely used things that we use now, we have decals, we have stickers, copian things, strings, paints, there's dots, there's different films. I've done some, you know, research online recently. There's many things out there, and most of them are proven to be, you know, quite effective. What's important about, you know, decals, or even if we put up some paracord, stickers, anything like that, we have to keep in mind the rule here is a 2 by 4 inch rule for spacing any item used to make the pattern. And as we went along too, in learning a little bit more about this 2x4 inch rule, I think now actually they're asking or encouraging, I should say, a 2x2 inch. So it, like Laetitia said earlier, birds will fly into very tight spaces. So we can't just put maybe a couple stickers up on our bay window and necessarily think that will cause the problem. I think we have to space them accordingly, according to the research. If we use, anything too wide vertically or horizontally, it's going to increase the likelihood of collision. Bird sabers here are a good rule of the 2x4 kind of vertical format. It's pretty inexpensive, pretty easy to make. Self-cleaning, 1 by 1/8 inch paracord hanging on 4-inch centers. It can look pretty nice in certain houses, I think, if done correctly. The second rule states that anything you hang in a front of a place or on the glass to make it visible to birds must be on surface 1 to be truly effective. So for example, if you buy some window decals or stickers, most of these will tell you to put them on the outside window. That's what we need to do. I purchased some recently that have some UV reflective thing. It's a little cold right now for them to adhere on the outside, but I'm working on that. I think I'm going to just tape them there temporarily until the spring when it warms up, and then they'll be able to adhere a little bit easily. But even if these things are personally cleared, untinted glass still acts like a mirror, and it will mask the view of really anything placed inside of the glass, making it ineffective in preventing bird collisions. So of course there's exceptions, again, kind of closing blinds, moving plants around, anything inside is helpful, but the outside is really best. Here's a thing from CollidEscape using some window film. They use this for advertising on buses. You can see through it from the inside, but on the outside you can see it appears solid, and comes in many colors, different sizes, many different patterns can be printed on this, wording, photographs. There's a lot of buildings that have moved in this direction recently, and it's kind of great to see. There's also informative signs using CollidEscape. You can really cut these CollidEscape decals, really any size, shape. It doesn't so much matter the size of the decal, the shape of the decal, but again, the spacing is the most important thing here. 2x4, maybe even 2x2 will be better. Birds will hit between any spacing that is larger, unfortunately. So the smaller we can make the spaces, the better it is. CollidEscape has a website too that you can visit. And again, I researched things just a few days ago before this presentation, and there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of things out there. So it's really great to see that things are out there for us to be aware of. Again, I think the most important thing here is this 2x4 rule. If we do, feather-friendly tape, something like that, this is very, inexpensive, and this is where they really recommend the 2x2 pattern that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Again, this is pretty simple to apply most of this stuff. There's a lot of different ways we can go with this. I'm not sure what slide we're on, but paint can be used. You can paint your glass, tempera paint. The sky's the limit here with what you may want to do if you have some artists. My father's an artist, my sister's an artist. They love doing things like this. Again, leaving the blinds down, this helps. But if the interior of the room is well lighted, or if there are windows on both sides of the room, this is not usually ideal. What I noticed at my house, and I don't have too many huge windows, but where I was getting a few strikes, not too many, but it was where one you could see from my dining room through into my kitchen. There was 2 windows where you could basically see through my house. So I, after kind of putting 2 and 2 together and kind of learning some of this stuff, that would be the first place to maybe look inside your houses or buildings if we can see through both sides of the room or through the house. It's really a could be a recipe for disaster, unfortunately, for the birds.
Sorry to interrupt. There
No,
was
go ahead.
a person asking, wouldn't closing blinds make it reflective? And Josh answered that it could. Closing the blinds works best to eliminate the tunnel that birds might try to fly through. And I would tend to agree with Josh. Like it eliminates the see-through effects, but not necessarily the reflective effects, I think.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And I have seen something else from somebody mentioning that clean windows might be a bigger threat. You know what? I'm really not a good person to clean my windows. I have been outside of my windows. I haven't cleaned them in like 3 years. Don't tell anybody. And they were still super reflective. So I'm afraid that the lazy, the lazy part about cleaning the windows doesn't help that much neither.
Yeah, I think you basically have to, smear mud over your whole window, and we don't want to do that. I think the paint idea is a little bit nicer. You can paint something beautiful if you want to go that route.
Okay, so I'm moving to the slides number 55. 55 about the Acopian Center of Ornithology, or the Audubon, Pennsylvania website, Eric.
Okay. How far would you like me to continue?
Maybe just about this slide. So we do have a couple of flyers that we will be able to share with Josh, and he can send that as a follow-up with you. So you'll have like a couple of different solutions. There's a PDF comparing the cost of some of the most common do-it-yourself methods or commercial methods. We'll send that to you. I'm taking it over now for the end of the solutions. So you might wonder what is bird friendly, and who decides what is or is not bird friendly. So currently in the USA, there is no official standards for ranking or testing products claiming to be bird friendly. So there are products being marketed as bird friendly that have been proven to actually be more lethal to birds than regular untreated sheet glass. So it's important to do your own research when deciding to purchase any product claiming to be effective in preventing bird window collisions, because basically they can write whatever they want on the label. Nobody's going to check that. And if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So we're going to go through some example of what does not work based on field experiments by scientists. So the first thing, and maybe the most common thing, or at least the one that I was mainly aware of, Raptor silhouette decals. So you see here, there you have a couple of Raptor silhouette decals on a couple of windows. They're basically not enough decals to be effective, and birds do not recognize the shape of a raptor in decals, and even if they would, they will after a couple of days they'll get used to it and they'll know it's not a real raptor, right? So and it doesn't matter the shape that you're using. Again, what really matters is the 2 inch by 4 inch rule, or the 2 inch by 2 inch rule, as the research tends to go now. So you can put like Raptor decals, but you would need to put them super close from one another to make it really effective. Basically, another way to remember the right sizing between the decals that you're using is you don't want to have any open space that is larger than an average handprint. That's as simple as that. So that's the first thing. Raptor decals, if they're too big and they're not respecting the 2 inch by 4 inch rules, it won't be, I mean, it might prevent a couple of collisions, but it won't be truly effective. Another thing is, and it can be counterintuitive, if you put your feeders closer than 3 feet from your window, it will actually prevent birds at feeder from building up enough momentum to harm themselves if they're startled. if they're scared. So yeah, it's completely counterintuitive, but you have to trust research on that one. It has been shown to be true. So here is an experiment. So again, it's coming from Dr. Klim's research. And so he had a scientific paper on feeder placement. So it tends to be like often misunderstood, and people think that bird feeder that are placed beyond 10 meters, so 30 feet, they will reduce collisions. The truth is, the only meaning of this chart is that they stopped the experiment at 10 meters, and if the experiment had gone out to maybe 15 meters, so 49 feet, the collision will likely have increased. So the closer you get your feeder from the window, the less momentum they'll gain when they're flying, and the less lethal the collision will be. So another thing is that you might have seen is hanging the glass, and it has been shown to be completely ineffective unless like the angle is super extreme and therefore completely impractical in most cases. So hanging your glass won't change a thing, so it's not effective. Okay, another thing that you might have heard of and is UV. So birds can see in the UV spectrum. We cannot, I mean, I cannot. So work has been done to develop a product that has a pattern birds can see and use to avoid the glass, but humans cannot see. And so therefore it doesn't interfere with our view, and we're not worried about the aspect of our windows. So there is a prototype UV window film with UV reflective stripes alternating with UV absorbing stripes. So basically to the birds, it looks like that. It was over 90% effective in field tests, but unfortunately, it's not yet available commercially, at our knowledge at least. So the left photo shows a perfectly clear view. So basically what you're seeing from the inside, and the right photo shows the same piece of glass in a darkened room with black lights. And so that's basically what we assume birds can see. Okay, so the only currently commercially available glass in March 2019 at least, the only current commercially available glass using UV signals to deter bird window collisions that has passed field testing is a product by a company called Walker Glass in Montreal in Canada. It was fairly effective, like 69%, and to the human eye, you can only see a faint line. So this could be a solution when you're doing a new construction or you're replacing your windows instead of using decals or other deterrents like the one from Acopian bird savers. You can act directly on the windows, but there are not a lot of solutions at the moment. Although there are products claiming to work because of UV, if you can see it, so can birds. So again, it's not because if you're using decals and the product mentioned that it has UV, so it will be visible to the birds, it doesn't prevent you from using the 2x4 inch rule. So the product will work because birds can see them, and so you need to use the 2" x4" rule to really protect the birds. So again, it's just another example on how you need to be careful when you read the claims from a product. So again, the simplest rule is 2" x4" rules, and put the decals or anything on the outside surface. Those are the only rules you should follow and trust on the packaging. The good news is that industry is taking notice of the growing demand for solutions and options for bird-friendly products. So now there are many retrofit window films and glass with visible patterns designed to reduce and prevent bird window collisions available for the commercial and institutional markets. Hopefully, it's only time before the homeowner benefits from those developments. So just to give you a couple of examples, so you have the fritted glass for use in see-through corridors or when the interior is always lighted. So when the lighting is greater on the inside than the outside or completely see-through, this is kind of the only times when items on the inside of the glass will be truly effective in preventing birds CollidEscape. So again, out of security, if you're using anything, put it on the outside surface, and unless you're pretty sure that you have the proof and like field experiments that are demonstrating the effectiveness of the solution. So again, for new construction or total renovation, you also have an example here of acid etched glass. So there are a lot of options in this category of glass. And again, the thing that you need to double check is that the visible pattern follow the 2x4 inch rules. So we're just coming back and back again to the same rules. So hopefully you'll get the message. So yeah, so there are lots of different choices out there, but currently most options require a visible pattern using the 2x4 rule on the outside surface of a window to be effective. So just to give you my solution, the one that I went for, and I'm renting my apartment, so I didn't want to like change the windows or go for something super expensive because I'm not going to be there for a long time. So I went for the decals, and so I used them from, that's basically what it looks like, from Feather Friendly. So they provide you with a tape with tiny stickers like that. You apply them. They also provide like meters. So you're able to follow the 2x4 rules. I had the same issue than Eric. You have to have like temperatures outside that are above 50 degrees to, I mean, you can try to apply them, but if you're doing it and the temperatures are below 50 degrees, they might not stick as well. So that worked well for me. I did that in December. I had one day with temperatures above 50, and it looks like you can see it pretty well from the outside, but from the inside, you can definitely see it. But I mean, we had a black-capped chickadee a couple of days ago that struck with our window, and it was quite easy to convince my partner to go for these solutions, and we can still see through our windows. So it's really good. We feel much better. So yeah, maybe just a couple of words to conclude. In the end, some people, I'm sure it's not the case of our audience today because they seem to be mostly bird lovers, but some people might still ask why it's important to prevent bird window collisions and what difference it makes if a few birds die at a building each year. Well, the answer to that is kind of obvious. If just 1 or 2 birds die each year at each of the hundreds of millions of collision-prone buildings that exist in the US, that quickly adds up to hundreds of millions of birds dying every year in the US alone. So at least 1 million of birds per day for the collision in the US. And I think I can skip the part about why birds matter. I think like most people here do think that birds matter. So yeah, I guess without birds, we will all be lost. And maybe up, just trying to get to the next slide. Yeah, up. So yeah, we can help to protect our birds by using the products and techniques that we have described today, and you can choose whatever solutions works well for you and for your family. And you can take actions to protect your house. Again, as we mentioned, there is no small windows that should be left aside when you're protecting them, because as long as there is a window, it's a danger for birds. And even if you think there is no strike happening at your home, I mean, let me know if you're 100% in front of each window in your house, and most likely you're missing some of those happening because of all the reasons that we mentioned at the beginning. So even if you think that it's not a problem in your house, it probably is. It's just that, I'm sorry to tell you that, it's just that you're not seeing it the same way that we're not seeing it happening. So that's the first way you can help reduce the problem. And the other way is by sharing information from today's presentation with others. By doing so, we'll help to make the world a better place for feathered friends, so they can continue to make the world a wonderful place for us. Quick, one last thing. So as I mentioned, we will share a small flyer with Josh and resources that you can use. Just to give you an example, that will look like that. Just gonna. So you won't be able to read everything, but just so you know, so it's like a 2-pager, and it's summarizing the different type of solution that we reviewed today, and like some of the sad facts and things like that. So that's the first thing. And also, it's, if you ever take action, and we hope you'll do about that, it would be great if you would be able to share actions that you're taking with us. So you can either do it by sending us pictures, or just a pic, not saying, hey, I did it, I finally find the time and I did it. You don't necessarily need pictures. Just let us know, and you can do that using an email address that Josh will provide in the follow-up email, or on a Facebook page. Again, you don't need to share pictures if you don't have time. Just a quick word, I did it, and it will be a good thing for us to know that this presentation has some kind of impact. And we will also let the people that designed this entire presentation know. And again, same thing for them. They'll know that their action is having an impact. So yeah, that's my final point. And thanks for everybody to listen to us, even though we're not experts.
Yes, thank you so much. And just to go further what Laetitia said, yes, successes and failures. Hopefully, successes. You know, if you try something and maybe it doesn't work, we'd like to, you know, something on your windows. We'd love to know that too. So again, you know, we're all kind of learning here, and so we can have it be as knowledgeable as we can, and you know, keep passing this these facts and this knowledge to everyone else. So it was certainly my pleasure to share this with everyone.
Perfect. Josh, do you know if I completely stopped tracking the questions in the chat. Do you know if there are some questions that we missed or we haven't answered?
There was a bunch of them, actually. It was nice. A lot of good questions.
There have been a ton of questions. Most of them have been responded to, or you guys have actually answered in the presentation. We do have one kicking around just about putting screens on windows, and does that reduce collisions and the appearance of reflections?
Screens? I'm not sure. So what?
This one person, I believe it was a woman. I'm not looking at the chat right now, but she said that she hung some just screen material, like the screen material over her windows, to I guess reduce the strikes, maybe prevent the force of the strike, but more importantly, I think just to take away some of the visibility of the glass.
Okay.
Yeah, and this I think was referring to those seasonal screens, which I'd agree would make it more visible than not having the screen up, and provide a bit of a cushion if a collision were to occur.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and also people can let us know, like, yeah, maybe how many people learned something from today and today's presentation, and what was the most striking fact that you learned today, maybe. Yeah, that would be interesting for us to know. And also, if you plan to take actions, that will be interesting to know. I know it took me like a couple of months to do something, just because I was busy and it was part of my mind. And then I saw this poor little black-capped chickadee, and I think it happened. I mean, I saw it only once, but it convinced me to do something immediately.
Okay, so we will make sure to send out a follow-up email to everyone with those links, and I'm going to spare you all me reading through all of our contact information, because we'll provide all of that in the follow-up email with resources that you'll all receive in the next few days. So unless there's anything else, I'd just really like to thank Laetitia and Eric, Teresa, everyone from the Audubon Society of the Capital Region for your willingness just to provide the public with all this amazing information. It was a very thorough presentation, and really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your evening to share this with the public.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. And I saw that there is somebody asking like confirmation of the claims that the window feeders are the safer. I can send you a couple of things, Josh, that you can include in the follow-up email to finish to convince the people that are not completely convinced on this point.
Fantastic. That one took me a long time to take the jump. I really could not see that as possibly safer, but I've been pleasantly surprised with the efficacy of it.
Wonderful.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of the evening. Thank you all so much again for being here. And if there's no more questions, I think we'll sign off.
Thanks, Josh, for organizing everything.
Yes, take care.
Thank you again, guys.
Hey, you're welcome.